exciting today. We have our rotating interview, Whit Prouty of the team, doing the interview today, and he's going to be interviewing Laura Gilman, who is MBA certified financial planner. We were just talking about all the designations she has. This is a great time, really, with all the craziness going on, the stock market down, now it's up. What's going on? So, Whit, take it away. And Laura, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks.
Yeah, well, first I am going to say welcome, Laura. We're very excited to have you here on Ask an Expert. Laura is also the co-founder of KCS Wealth Advisory, and she's going to talk to us today about taking your financial temperature during a pandemic. But first, you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself, and then we'll start to get into maybe some questions.
Sure, definitely. Thanks so much for having me. I so appreciate this opportunity. This is great. And Whit, I've known you so many years that I just have to give you an amazing shout out because you helped me buy my first house. So I so appreciate you having me here. Yeah, basically, as you said, I'm the managing director at KCS Wealth Advisory. And my background actually is this recovering CPA. I always say recovering. So I always have a little foot in the door. Basically, I'm a certified financial planner, and I help individuals, couples, small business owners, helping them achieve financial success through life goals with intensive financial planning and investment management. So basically, I coach clients on how to build and retain wealth throughout their lives. So that's what I do day in and day out.
That's a good thing. we all need to have a healthy financial persona. Anyway,
we like them to.
Yes, exactly. We want to be able to take care of ourselves, and so that's quite important. During this time, we're going to jump to what's going on. And so a lot of people are worried right now about their finances. Not only their cash flow, but also their portfolios. What are some of the things that they can do now to get through these rocky markets?
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting because everybody's in sort of a different position right now, depending on what stage of life they're in. So some people are having a lot of difficulty in terms of they've either had lost income or their jobs are sort of at risk right now. Other people are retired and they're just sort of worried about the markets and how their cash flow is going to be going forward. So the first recommendation we give everybody, and we started this from the day this risk started, was go through your expenses and go through your income and take a really deep dive into understanding what your expenses are. The good part of this is since we're all sort of trapped in our houses, a lot of our expenses have gone down, unless you're sort of, shopping for therapy right now. But a lot of expenses have gone down. So looking for those ways to reduce your expenses as much as possible to limit how much you have to pull if you do have to pull from your savings or your investments at this time. And also, and I'll give you, there's some examples we can give about looking at your income and also look at that side of the equation and maybe even do projections of how long your cash with the income coming in will last against all of your future expenses. So that's important to look at. The other thing we always like to say also is stay the course. One of the biggest things in a rocky market is panicking. And most people will panic because you just don't know how it's going to last, if it's going to keep going up and down, if it's going to get worse. And particularly in this environment, you not only have the fear of the markets,
I think she froze again. Laura?
That's all right. So we'll wait for Laura to get back.
Yeah.
So one thing just kind of that I thought was great with that she touched base on was going over your expenses. And I don't know about you, but my coach has me, I have 3 different levels of expenses. I have, living large mode, which I'm able to enjoy life and save a lot. And then I have regular mode, and then I have lean mode. And it's really easy to cut out 10-20% of your expenses without really feeling the pain right now. And while we have closings and things are quote unquote happening, I have adjusted to lean mode expenses And, with this COVID, I mean, part of lean mode is cooking at home as opposed to going out. And that's something that we can't do right now.
Yeah,
How about yourself?
exactly.
Whit?
Yeah, I think Laura is actually back on now.
Oh, okay.
There we go. Hey.
I'm sorry. I don't know what is happening with my internet today.
That's
one of
okay,
those
Laura.
things.
So we left you with Stay the Course, and while you were out, I was just saying that I have, when you talked about going over your budget, I have 3 different budgets for myself, which is A, living large mode, let's save and spend a lot of money, and 2 is regular mode, and 3 is lean mode, and that's exactly the mode that I'm in right now. And kind of the funny thing is, with lean mode, that means cooking at home, not going out, and that's kind of where everybody is. So it's kind of a default, if you will.
Yeah, and that's sort of perfect. And it's one of the things we also recommend sort of in how do I deal with this for next, like how can I get myself in shape for the next thing that might happen in this realm? And so that's one of the things we highly recommend. And I love that you're doing that, Martin, because we like people to have their regular budget. They're sort of, I'm doing really well and I can spend a little more budget because I can enjoy myself. And that super lean budget when things really aren't what we expect. And so we can easily move between the 3 budgets if we need to. So we don't have to panic and not know what to do when moments like this happen. You already have a plan in place. So I love that you put that together. I think that's perfect planning. And you're like, one would be my star pupil.
Yeah, that's one thing I have to say. It's like,
that's funny.
How many people do you think really are prepared like that out there?
Well, if there are clients, we hope they are. So that's one of the things we work on with our clients. But yeah, many people don't do that because it is sort of one of those, it's a bummer. Like who wants to prepare for the worst? But in Southern California, we have to prepare for earthquakes. It's the same sort of thing. You need to actually have that in your list of things to prepare for in bad times.
Right.
Yeah. So quickly going back to the other piece about staying the course is when markets go down, the negative of selling means that if you pull money out or go to cash, you can't really predict, most people, when to get back in. And one of the most interesting stats, there's all these studies have been done around this, but one of the most interesting I find is JP Morgan did some research and they showed if we look past the past 20 years, from 2000 to 2019, if you were fully invested in the S&P 500, you would have made about 6% per year. That's per year, annualized. But if you missed the 10 best days of the year, so the 10 days that went up the most, your average annual return would have dropped to 2.44% per year.
Ouch.
That's a 60% drop because you missed the 10 best days of the year out of over 7,000 days in that time period. That's tremendous. And the crazy part is those 6 of those 10 best days occurred within 2 weeks of the 10 worst days in market. And we kind of see this with the pandemic. The market has been extreme high, extreme low, day to day. I mean, it's only been 2 or 3 months and the market's been crazy. So if you miss those really good days, the negative of going to cash or panicking means you'll miss those upsides. And so that's why
selling is really not a good thing.
It's pretty extreme numbers when we look at them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
huge.
Pretty
Those
incredible.
are big numbers.
Yeah. So and again, it's also one of the reasons why the government in the CARES Act waived RMDs, required minimum distributions from IRAs and all retirement accounts for this year, for 2020, because they realized you don't want to sell and have to distribute when the market is down. It's very detrimental to your overall long-term health in your portfolio.
Interesting. So, okay. So that's all the reasons why not to panic sell. But what if someone still needs cash flow and they might need to sell in order to maintain that cash flow? Absolutely. What do they do?
Absolutely. So there's definitely things you can do. The first is we don't call it timing the market because we don't like those words, but what we can do is look for what we call mini upturns. So in every big, long down market, we have what we call these cyclical bull markets, which are these time periods where the market just jumps up and then it might go down again and then it jumps up. We want to try to at least wait out to catch those up markets. The best way to do that is to have some cash on the sidelines, sort of like an emergency reserve, that we normally recommend you have in good times as well as bad. So if you have a bunch of cash on the sideline, then you can use that cash in the intermediate, in the immediate term, so to wait for those sort of mini up periods, and then try to sell at those moments because you're paying active attention for when the markets do that. So that's one of the things you can do to at least minimize the damage of pulling in a down market. The other thing you can do is, especially what we've seen in this past few months, is the market went down quite quickly, which meant a lot of people, if you're normally in a 60% stock portfolio, found themselves with only 55% stocks because the stocks dropped and the bonds didn't drop as much. So we normally would want to rebalance that. Well, what you would do to rebalance is if you need the cash, take from your bonds, right? That will automatically make your your stock percentage higher and will prepare you for when the market comes back, you have the right allocation to capture the gains on the way back up. So that's another thing you can do in terms of if you have to pull from the accounts, where to look for. And then the third thing, which is really the last thing we want people to look at, is the CARES Act did pass some options for pulling from retirement accounts. And one of the really great things, particularly for people under 59 and a half, is we normally have a 10% penalty plus taxes. Well, you can now pull up to $100,000 from any retirement account. And you have and there's no penalty, they waive the 10%, and you don't even have to pay taxes if you re-put the money back in within 3 years. So you're sort of giving yourself a loan if you can put it back. If you don't put it back in 3 years, you do owe the taxes. Right. Yeah. There's one other.
Wow, that's great. I didn't know about the 3 years.
Yeah.
You can put it back.
Yeah. The second piece you can also do is on a 401k, if your company has a 401k or 403b plan and they've elected it, and they do have to elect this stuff, then you could also take the normal loans, $50,000 up to 50%. They've raised that to $100,000. So you can now do a normal 401k loan. It's usually a 5-year loan. You pay yourself back. The limits have gone higher.
So, but there's interest on that, correct?
There's interest, but you pay yourself interest. Okay. The interest goes back to you, and you pay it over that 5 years out of payroll deductions, assuming you still are working. Yeah,
that's
but
great.
You should check with your if you're still working with your employer for the provider to see if they've elected that. I've already had one client take advantage of that.
And are there other advantages in CARES Act as well too for people?
Yeah, so there's definitely other opportunities that you can take advantage of right now. One is, I mentioned the RMDs are waived, and so we do recommend, if you don't need to pull from your IRA, look at where you're living, especially in retirement. Start pulling from other investment accounts instead of your IRAs. And they're allowing you to put any RMDs you've taken from February 1st all the way to July 31st, you can put it back in. So as long as you put the money back in by July 31st, it's like it never happened. So what that means is you're in a lower tax bracket for this year, which means there's some opportunities there. You can consider doing Roth IRA conversions, which is a nice opportunity. So instead of actually pulling the money and using it, you can convert it into a Roth. And one of the great things of Roth conversions in a down market is the market's down. So you're pulling money out of an IRA, putting it into a Roth IRA, and the growth that returns is all tax-free, as opposed to letting it grow back in the IRA. So it really is a great opportunity to get money out of something that's taxable in retirement and put it into something that's tax-free in retirement, which Roth IRAs are tax-free in retirement once you pull the money out.
Gotcha.
So that's a nice opportunity. We also recommend on the investment side considering tax loss harvesting, which means selling some of your losses, reinvest the money into something else because you still want to be invested. So if you sell one stock and buy another, you're still invested, so you'll come back up with the market, but you get to recognize that loss. So then when the market comes back up and you make a sale and now you have a gain, the loss and the gain offset each other. And so you don't pay taxes. So it's another nice tax advantage you can do in down markets. So it's sort of a little bit of upside we have in all of this craziness.
Any way that we can keep that hard-earned money for ourselves is better.
That's right. Do those hand gestures again with hard-earned money.
Exactly. What about are there any other like special tax benefits available as well?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that have come out. One is they changed, if anyone's being very charitable during this period, if they're able to. They changed the AGI limits to 100% deduction. It used to be 60. So you can now donate more and get more off your taxes. So there's going to be a lot of tax things you can do this year to get some benefits. They also increase the limits on corporations giving donations as well. And there's also some gifting options that you can do if you're interested in gifting. Because we're at low rates, there's also low family loan rates that you can use. They're called AFR rates. Those rates have come down quite a bit. So there's some interesting estate planning things you can do right now if you're interested in gifting or giving family loans to people in this environment. There are some things you can do. I'm not going to get into the specifics of them here, but there are some benefits you can look into.
No, I mean, that all sounds great, because I'm sure that in a time like this, nonprofits are hurting. And so anything that makes it more advantageous towards giving towards those nonprofits, I mean, that's a positive thing on the moral compass thing, right?
Absolutely.
And then,
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say the thing you have to be careful is that the benefits are only for cash contributions or food donations. They're not like all these other complicated things. Donating a car doesn't count. Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely. Okay. What about helping with people's cash flow?
Yeah. So Martin made a really good comment about having that, here's my budget in tough times, right? How do I cut back? Well, there's lots of things that different companies are doing right now to help people to cut back. So one is there's a bunch of deferral programs. So there's some mortgage deferral programs you can take advantage of, student loan deferral programs that you can take advantage of. Be careful of checking on your program because they're different between the government programs and the private ones. So you definitely want to call your provider and ask what options they have. People are asking landlords for rent deferrals. Some even are saying, I heard someone say, you know, they were able to reduce their rent by 10% for the next few months, and then they just tack it on over the next few months. So it's not like a big lump sum all at once. So it at least helps. I'm also reading in Los Angeles, they have a pool of money that they might be able to give to people to help them with their rent, up to $1,000 a month. So once that comes out, we'll put that on our website for people to take advantage of. Also, I recently read that credit cards are actually helping people with deferrals, or at a minimum, if you call them and say, I can't make payments for the next few months, they'll defer the late fees or waive the late fees. So it's worth calling, especially if you're home and have time on your hands, to call these various companies and see what you can do. A couple other things is look at utilities, look at your insurance. Auto insurance should be giving deductions to everybody, and this was kind of big in the news. I know State Farm is giving, I think, a 25% discount to everybody because nobody's driving and there's not a whole lot of accidents anymore. So, you know, you should call your insurance company and say, hey, I haven't driven in 2 months. Can I have a reduction in my auto insurance premiums? And a lot of them are offering that. So it's worth sort of looking around and looking for those discounts.
Great.
Great. And just touching, I'm just going to interrupt for a second. Sorry, wait. Like on expenses and stuff. So the key thing I think, and this is from experience, is don't hide, right? If you're going to be behind on stuff, pick up the phone and call people. And I noticed I didn't say text or email. Really talking to people. Would you agree with that, Laura?
Absolutely. I think hiding exacerbates the problems because almost all of these programs are only granted if you ask for them. They're not just going to give it to you. So you calling and explaining, I think people, not everybody, but I think a lot of people are going to be more amenable because they're difficult. Now, not everybody can. Some landlords can't necessarily afford to take reductions, which is why the city is putting forward some of these programs. But I think it's important to at least put it out there and just say, hey, you don't have to tell them your situation. Just say, hey, things are really rough right now. Are there any programs that are available for me? Or make the ask. Say, hey, would I be able to reduce my rent by 10% or 20% this month? Make an offer and see how they respond. Instead of just saying, I need help, I can't pay, right? Make an offer and see if they'll negotiate with you. And I think more people, hopefully people are sympathetic and can relate to other people right now and help out in those situations.
Yeah, right. Hopefully they can. I mean, I think most of what I've seen is not forgiveness of the debt, but at least moving the debt off right now to help with cash flow. Exactly. and not adding penalties towards moving that debt.
Yeah, and I think that the one thing I do warn people on, because sometimes it's not worth it, we've seen this on the mortgage side, is some mortgage companies are like, well, wait, we'll defer for 3 months and then you owe 4 months all at once at the end. Well, that's not going to help, right? You're just going to be in a worse situation then. So I wouldn't normally recommend that. I mean, there might be situations, but they might be willing to do something where, like I said, with the rent, where they reduce it and then they divide it up among 8 payments after that, right? So you have a little bit of higher payments down the road for a little lesser payments now. And it just helps to juggle. It's important to look at that big picture. That's why understanding your full budget and saying, okay, I'm taking little bits here and little bits there is a better way to look than just trying to take a big chunk of something and hoping that will work out.
Great, that's good. Talk to us about how you suggest people prepare for something like this in the future if they're not there at this moment, or they don't feel that they have it all put together.
Yeah.
Because they keep talking about how something could happen again in the fall. We don't know, but how do we plan ahead? Maybe something doesn't happen this year, but a year or 2 from now.
Yeah, I mean, one of my worries isn't just my worry because I'm a paranoid, is we could have another pandemic in 5 years. Like, what do we do then, right? Like, we have a little knowledge now, and hopefully we'll learn from it. But yeah, like I think the best suggestion right now is Martin's suggestion of putting your budget together now, understanding your budget. And there are lots of tools you can use to do that. There's online tools. One of my favorites is mint.com. It's free. It aggregates your data into software so you can see all of your budget. You could use other sorts of software tools. You could use a spreadsheet. But to understand your budget, because then when you have to cut, you know where to look, right? Otherwise, you're just like, I don't know, I just spent a lot of money and I don't know where to start. It just is overwhelming. So if you already have a budget, and especially if you have one that's, okay, if I need to tighten my belt, this is what the budget would be, I think that definitely is helpful. And if you have the time now's a great time to do it, to start that process and start that tracking. Also, we're seeing some stories about people who are making sort of rash decisions around retirement, around Social Security. One of the biggest things you can do, and now might not be the best time, but to start considering, is really put together a financial plan. And I'm not doing this as a pitch, but one of the benefits of, some people are saying, I need money now, so I'm going to collect my Social Security now, even though it might be better for them to wait. And so having a plan in place and knowing what your plan is, and then being able to say, all right, if I do take it earlier, does that drastically affect my future? Because remember, we're in this now, but people still have years and years and years, potentially 20, 50, 70 years to go. And you don't want what's happening now to affect you for 10 and 20 years down the road, because you made a decision now that's irreversible. And the big irreversible decisions are retirement and Social Security, right? Once you make that decision, you can't go back on it. So it's important, I think, to sort of get a handle on what that projection looks like, and then look at it and say, all right, if we make these changes, is it going to drastically affect us in the future? Or are there other things we can do to counter that? And those are sort of the big things we look at. The third really big thing that I think is important is this is the best time to understand your risk tolerance and how you're reacting to the markets. And if you're panicking and ready to sell at a moment's notice, you probably have too much risk in your portfolio. So you should
don't look at the stock ticker every single moment of the day.
That's great, Laura. That's a really great piece. I've never heard that before, but this is a good time to see what your risk tolerance is. And if you're freaking out, time to reshuffle the deck, right?
Exactly, because a lot of people measure their risk tolerance in good times, where they're like, oh, I love the upside, so this is fabulous. Your risk tolerance is measured by the downside, right? How you handle when markets go down. And this has been one of the it's been short, but it's been one of the toughest markets because it's been the fastest drop in history. And so when you go down that fast, you really learn how well you can keep your risk tolerance going. And so that's why we recommend look at this period, see how you react, see if it makes sense to change your risk tolerance, but also look at that and if it affects your long-term plan. Don't just do it in a vacuum. Make sure that you can tolerate reducing your risk psychologically, but also financially. Maybe you need to take more risk because of your financial situation. So it's important to look at both of those issues.
Yeah. Well, so finances aren't the only thing people are worried about, right? So they're also concerned about their health, which makes them worry about what happens to their family if they get COVID-19. Is there anything that you suggest they do to help alleviate this worry?
Yeah, so I've been talking to a lot of estate planners and they're all inundated. Everybody's panicking and saying, I need an estate plan. I need healthcare directives. If I get sick and end up in the hospital. And so there's a lot of sort of misinformation or panic out there around estate planning. So if you don't have a plan and you're considering it, it is worth looking at. If you don't have a plan. If you do have a plan, it's important this is maybe a good time to look at it. One of the most important things that people aren't considering, they're considering if I die for estate planning. But one of the biggest things in estate planning is, what if I'm disabled? What if I can't make decisions for myself? What if I'm not able to? What if this COVID affects me in some other way or anything? So the disability component of an estate plan is just as important, your capacity to make decisions, as death is. So an estate planning can encompass that, and that's a good conversation to have with your or an estate attorney. We have gotten some crazy questions from people regarding some of my clients are planning for when they go to the hospital, like they're already putting their plan, like, I want these medicines, I want this treatment, I don't want to be on a ventilator. But they're starting to panic that just because normally being on a ventilator means it's sort of like your last stage of life, and a healthcare directive might then come into play. And so I've spoken to, and they're panicked about that. And I've spoken to a few estate planners, and most say they craft their healthcare directives not about being on a vent, but about being on you basically have no cure going forward. There's nothing they can do to save your life at this point. Most people going on ventilators now is to save their lives, not to potentially say this is a last ditch effort, right? This is to save their lives. So you want to look at your healthcare directive and see how it's like, what the language is, and make sure it says, 2 doctors have said that there's no hope anymore and there's nothing we can do. And that's when your healthcare directive comes into play in terms of like, what happens after that. So it's not something to panic about. Most healthcare directives don't mention ventilators, don't mention any of the stuff, even though it is sort of one of those end of life things. In this moment, it's not an end of life thing. It's a life-saving measure. And so most won't come into effect in that situation.
That's great.
That's great to know.
Yeah. It's just, we get a lot of these random questions, and I think it's important to kind of put good information out there from some of these questions that we're getting.
Yeah. Okay, so give us kind of like, we're approaching our end of time here. So would you just give us kind of like your highlight section, and we'll see too if anybody has in the chat box any specific questions for you, but maybe just kind of your roundup of top pointers for how we get through this very uncertain time that no one's ever experienced before.
Yeah, I think the biggest part is to try not to panic. Planning is your friend. And the more plan you have, the less you have to panic, because you have something in place to help you get through it. So take advantage of the expense saving things. Take advantage, I didn't mention, there's all these programs that the governments are offering from an income perspective that people who've never been able to use these programs now can. So take a moment to sit and say, okay, what's my situation? Try to evaluate it, and then go out and see what things are offered. And we have a bunch of webinars on our page that can help if anyone wants to look at those on our website. But there's
I was going to ask,
sorry.
Do you have maybe some good sources for people to go, like where they should go?
Yeah, so again, it depends. Their situation is the hard thing to know where to go. If they're if they've lost income, there's, you want to look towards the unemployment programs, particularly if you're freelance, there are now unemployment programs. If you're a small business, there's lots of loan programs you can look at from an income perspective. So it's hard to know which direction to go in. We actually have a page on our website that has 2 pages of resources of where to go. We put it when this first started happening and people were losing income. And it's as specific as if you're a musician, you can go to these programs to get grant money. I mean, it goes down to the level of industry, because we were just trying to put as much information as we could in one place, because it really is all over the place. There's information everywhere on the internet. So that's one resource that people can use, at least to look at different options. And I'm also, willing, if anyone wants a half-hour conversation about their specific situation, I'm happy to do that as well.
That's fantastic. Yeah, we'll make sure that as this is posted, that Jared makes sure to include your information so that if people want to reach out to you with more questions, they can reach out to you and get in touch with you. Yeah, he's just giving me the high sign saying saying yes, he'll take care of that. Very good. Well, that wraps up our session. We're at our half hour. Laura, I want to thank you so much. This information is so important for all of us as we try to navigate our finances through just a crazy time with so much uncertainty about everything going on. But it really then, this kind of information helps people have peace of mind going forward, which then allows us to have a lot more fun in our lives, right?
You have to find fun.
Hopefully.
It's really hard to find fun right now, but I do recommend, there's lots of cool stuff going on the internet now that we would never normally get access to. And so I do recommend, you have to, otherwise, you can go crazy.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again.
Thanks,
and I think that wraps us up. Is that scene, Martin?
That sounds great, Will. That scene. Great job, Whit. Thank you again, Laura. Super great. So next Thursday, first Monday of every month, we're talking about different markets here in the U.S. with real estate experts, and we're talking with the husband and wife team that sells in Seattle. So that's for next Thursday. So thanks again, everybody, and we'll talk to you next week.
Perfect. Bye-bye, everyone.